I dream about this event all the time, at least 3 or 4 times a year. Want to hear a lame story? I've got one. I did a video on some lame stories, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and since then I've gotten 4 or 5 emails of people saying, hey, here's my lame story. It's not very good, but I hope you enjoy it. So they're all really good, but here's my lame story. When I was in my early 20s, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and I grew up a city boy. I'm not a country boy, I'm a city boy. I live in the country now, and I was kind of raised by country people who had moved to the city. But after I got married, down the street from my wife's, where she grew up, there's a man that lived down there, and he was a gunsmith, and I took a shotgun down to him hoping he could fix it cheap. I had a problem with it was a poly choke that was on the outside of the barrel, and he never fixed it. Matter of fact, he kind of screwed it up. But I got to know the guy, and he was a little bitty guy. He's about that tall. He's about that big around. And he was just one of the jolliest, most fun guys you'd ever want to meet. Well, he was a big turkey hunter. And he grew up hunting turkeys in the Mississippi Delta. Those Delta turkeys, they're hard to hunt. They're just hard to hunt. But he grew up doing that, and I had never turkey hunted in my life. I kind of grew up duck hunting and squirrels and rabbits and just small game. But I got to asking him about turkey hunting, and I got real interested in it. And then he gave me a book called, the title of the book is 10th Legion. The author is Tom Kelly. If you ever get a chance to read that book or buy it or pick it up, if you like turkey hunting, that is the book to read. It's the Turkey Hunter's Bible. It's an awesome book. I've read it 10 times since I got my copy. So I read this book, and I was all over turkey hunting. But I lived in the city. I didn't know anybody that owned any land. The only land available was public land up and down the river. And every turkey season, from my understanding at that time, it was just covered up with people. So I just never went. Plus I was working all the time, so I never went. Well, at the infamous Land Between the Lakes, a friend of mine told me that they were going to do their very first turkey quota hunt. So he and I put in for that quota hunt. He didn't get drawn, but I did get drawn. And it was a hunt that was going to start, I think, on Wednesday and end on Sunday, and there were 2 groups. And I was in the first hunt. I was going to be the first, one of the first, I don't know how many they picked in the quota, but I was going to be one of the first people to hunt LBL on their very first quota hunt, and it was before the season started. It was like the week before the season started. It's just perfect. And I had never been in the woods to hunt turkeys in my life. So I arranged to get off work. I got off work for a couple of days, and I loaded up my truck. I threw a mattress in the bed of my truck. I had a topper on the back of my truck. I loaded up my truck, and I drove up to Land Between the Lakes, and I wanted to get in the most remote place I could find. So what I thought I would do is drive all the way up almost to the Kentucky state line and go back through those old roads back in there and find me a spot and park my truck, sleep in my truck, and hunt for those 2 or 3 days that I was in that quota. So I found a spot off a narrow little road, and I pulled in, and I backed off down into some, it was actually some saplings growing up, and I tried to back way back up in there where nobody could see me, and I just have that little spot to myself for the next 2 days. And I was backing over saplings and tearing up my bumper and all that stuff. I didn't care about all that. I just wanted to turkey hunt. So I parked my truck. I went out and I scouted a little bit, trying to get familiar with the area before the hunt started the next morning. Came back to my truck. I had brought bologna and cheese and crackers and stuff like that. Made me a bologna sandwich. Sat in the back of the truck till it got dark, read a book. Then I got up in the back of the truck, covered up, and I went to sleep. Well, after I went to sleep, I had been asleep. I don't know what time it was. It was maybe, felt like 2 or 3 hours later, the truck started rocking. And I thought somebody had found me. So I was hollering, "Hey, what's going on? What's going on?" Didn't get an answer. The truck stopped rocking. And so I guess I must have fallen back to sleep. And it wasn't probably too long, I don't know, I was asleep. The truck started rocking again, and I could hear something rubbing on the side of the truck. Like I was actually backing the truck in, and trees and stuff, little saplings were scratching the side of the truck. But it was something moving alongside of the truck. So I jumped up, popped that flip up glass, and I looked around and shined my flashlight around. I never saw anything. So I thought, okay, so I went to bed. Went back to bed, and right before dawn it happened again. I had an alarm, little wind up alarm in there, and it went off, and I was fixing to eat me a Pop-Tart, and it was dark outside, and the truck started doing that again, and I could hear something breathing like a horse outside the truck. Well, I thought I had figured out what it was. I didn't know anything about Land Between the Lakes. I had never even been there. But as I was driving in, I saw bison, buffalo, all along the side of the roads, and they were bringing back the buffalo species into that area. Well, I didn't know at the time they had them pinned up. I figured they just roamed around. I didn't know anything. But I figured one of those buffaloes had come and was rubbing against my truck or nuzzling my truck or something. So I just forgot about it. So I got up and I went hunting. And I'll tell you about the hunt. It's my very first day I ever stepped in the woods turkey hunting. So if you're familiar with Land Between the Lakes, it's just full of these finger ridges. They might be 20, 30, 40 feet to the bottom, and it's just these little narrow finger ridges that run all through the place. And some places are flat, but when you get into those finger ridges, it gets confusing back in the woods. So I was just following along the top of this finger ridge, and it was almost like a game trail. It was almost looked like people had been walking on it, but I never saw anybody. So I got to a place where I thought I could see pretty good down below me, and I had the high ground. I at least knew to do that. And I've been practicing on my turkey call, and I got set up, and the sun started coming up, and I was just about to hit that turkey call, because that's what Mr. Wilson, the gunsmith who got me into turkey hunting, that's what he told me to do. As soon as the sun comes up, just give just a couple of little yeps and just see what happens. I'd gotten my turkey call out, and I was about to hit that call, and a turkey it sounded like it was 10 feet away from me, but it was way on down in the bottom. Sounded off. And then another turkey over here sounded off. Then another one back over here. Then one over here. And then one behind me. I was covered up with turkeys. Covered up with them. And I sat there. I gave 2 or 3 yelps just to let them know I was there. And I put the call up. I'm not big on calling. And I waited for 3 or 4 hours. And none of those turkeys ever came to me. And I know what was happening now, but I didn't then. And I was so frustrated. I was trying to sit real still throughout that whole, if you've ever sat on the ground for 4 hours in the woods without a pad under your butt, every little pebble, acorn, whatever, just starts digging into your hips and your butt, and it just gets real comfortable. And my legs were asleep, and ticks were crawling all over me. And But I stayed perfectly still because Mr. Wilson told me, don't move a muscle when one sounds off at you. So I sat there for the longest time. Well, I got bored, and it got to be about 10 or 11 o'clock. I thought, man, I'm hungry. So I had brought a Snickers bar, and I reached down in my cargo pocket, and I pulled out a Snickers bar. And I'm sitting there undoing this Snickers bar, and I'm about to put it in my mouth, and I turned my head. At 20 yards to my right up on top of this finger ridge, there's this big tree that's blown across it. I mean, it's a big tree. The whole trunk was across the top of the finger ridge. And there was a turkey right on the other side of that blowdown tree. And he was strutting back and forth. And I've killed a bunch of turkeys since then. And since that day, I don't think I've ever seen a prettier display. You know, when these things happen, it seems like you remember every detail. I can still see it in my mind, just as clear as day. It was a good sunny day, and the sun was shining through, and there must have been a beam of light coming through the trees, through the canopy, that was hitting that spot, and it was like, oh, like the angels were singing, and this turkey was just strutting back and forth. Well, he had heard me that morning, and he knew I was there, and he was coming to check out what was there from that call I made 3 or 4 hours ago. I know that now. And I am shaking like a leaf. I'm just so nervous, butt fever. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to kill this turkey. As soon as he gets in a spot where he's not looking at me, turns his head, and I look down in my lap, and my shotgun is pointing this way. It's laying in my lap, pointing this way. This turkey's over here. So I've got to put this candy bar up, and I've got to twist this shotgun around, and I'm gonna have to shoot him left-handed. I'm right-handed, and I'm like, I don't know how in the world I'm gonna do this, but I got to do it. So I got the Snickers bar on the ground, and I was moving. You couldn't, if I did it now, you couldn't even see me move. That's how slow I was moving. I finally got the Snickers bar, got my hand back up on the shotgun, and I started to lift the end of that shotgun up just a little bit. I was going to try to keep it from going up in the air and skylining so he could see it. I was just going to move it like this, keep the barrel low, and then work the stock of that gun up and shoot him left-handed. I didn't get that shotgun 3 inches, and he made me. Off down the top of that finger ridge he went, and that was, you might think I'd be disappointed, but it was the most awesome experience I've ever had in my life. So I sat there for an hour walking, pacing off. I measured it, I stepped it off, I looked around, I was just looking at everything. I wanted to remember everything. So by this time it's noon, 1 o'clock, and I'm gonna come on back because I've done ruined this spot. I'm gonna have to go hit another spot. So I figured, well, I'll go back to my truck, I'll eat a bologna sandwich, lay around for an hour or so, then I'll go back out. Well, I got lost coming back. I wasn't but maybe half a mile from my truck. And those finger ridges, they all look the same. And I got lost, and I started walking, and I thought, well, I'll just keep walking. I know I'll hit a road somewhere, and I finally did. But I didn't know where I had popped out. I didn't know which way to go on the road. Luckily, I took the right turn and wound up back at my truck. But as I was coming back to my truck, I cleared some trees walking down the road, and I could see my truck backed up in there, and I could see something running off into the woods from behind my truck. And I have no idea what it was. I thought maybe it was dark. I thought maybe it was I didn't know what it was. The only thing I kept thinking the whole time was it was one of these bisons. Now, even then, a bison will kill you. If you get up close to a bison, they will stomp you to death, or they'll gore you with their horns, or you can see videos of them doing it to people on YouTube. But I never knew what it was, and I always thought it was a bison. But again, I didn't know that the bison were pinned, and I really didn't know bison were dangerous, so I never got really worried about it. So I get back to my truck. By this time it's 3 or 4 o'clock. It's going to get dark soon, so I just gave it up for the day. Fixed another bologna sandwich, went back to bed. Laying there reading a book, I'm awake this time. and this thing starts rubbing on my truck again. And I'm like, what in the hell is this? And I didn't have the slide windows on the side. Matter of fact, I don't even think I had windows. But I popped that back glass up again and I rolled over the tailgate and I'm looking around. I'm going to one side of the truck to the other, and I never saw anything, but I could hear something off in the darkness breathing like a horse. I don't know what it was. But I finished up that weekend. I hunted the next day. Turkeys all around me. I didn't know how to turkey hunt. Never killed a turkey. And I got home and I just forgot about it. Other than the event with the turkey. That was the premier event of my week there. And again, I'm in my early 20s. I don't know nothing. And I've told people that story about that turkey. When turkey hunters get together, we all love to tell fish tales about turkeys. And I've told that story 100 times because it was probably more exciting than either the first turkey I killed or the several I've killed through the years. And that's always my favorite story, but I've never connected that with what was going on with my truck. So still today, I don't know what it was. And I had never heard of, I'd heard of Bigfoot, but I never thought about, I never connected anything with Bigfoot. And I sure hadn't heard that LBL was a hot Bigfoot area, and I'm still not sure that it is. I'm thinking it's kind of hyped up a little bit. And I know there's Dogman stories from LBL and things like that, but that's my lame story. It's pretty corny, isn't it? But it made a video and something different to do, and I got some FaceTime on video, so maybe the algorithm will leave me alone. But that's my lame story. Y'all tell me what you think. Anybody been to LBL and had anything like that happen to them? It's pretty interesting. Anyway, thanks for listening to my lame story. I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you guys on the next video. All right.